Scorpio, there's something you've carried with you your entire life. Something that began long before you had the words to describe it, long before you even understood what spiritual meant. And tonight, that mystery is finally ready to speak. A spirit has walked beside you since childhood, and the reason for its presence is beginning to reveal itself. Think back to when you were small, barely tall enough to reach the light switch, when the house fell silent at night and everyone else was asleep. You remember that strange certainty that you weren't truly alone, the sense that the darkness in your room was not empty, but gently watching, that the space beside your bed held a presence that didn't frighten you, but made you feel inexplicably known. Adults may have brushed it off as imagination, a dream, an invisible friend, but deep inside, even as a child, you knew better. You sensed a quiet awareness that didn't come from you, a company that made loneliness feel somehow impossible. As you grew older, the sensations changed form but never fully left. There were nights you woke up suddenly with your heart strangely calm, not racing, not panicked, but wide awake with the inner knowing that you were being observed, not in a threatening way, but as if an unseen witness was sitting at the edge of your life, keeping guard. You may have dismissed it, rationalized it, buried it under school, work, responsibilities, and noise, but that feeling has always returned at crucial moments. The heartbreaks, the crossroads, the nights you almost gave up, the days when everything seemed to crumble. Something invisible always nudged you forward, whispered, "Not yet," and pushed you toward one more step, one more breath, one more attempt at living. That something, Scorpio, is not random. It isn't a glitch in your mind. It is a spiritual companion that tethered itself to your journey long before you opened your eyes in this life, and as your path becomes more intense, the reason for its constant presence is finally rising to the surface. You have always perceived the world differently from the people around you. While others took everything at face value, you saw undercurrents, motives, energies. While others listened to words, you heard the tone beneath them, the silence between them. You sensed when someone wasn't being honest, even if you couldn't prove it. You instinctively gravitated toward deeper truths, darker corners, unspoken emotions. You were never built for a life of numbed-out routines and superficial smiles. This sensitivity is not a flaw, it is evidence of a long-standing spiritual alliance. The spirit that has walked with you has been quietly sharpening your inner senses, teaching you how to navigate a world where most people are asleep, while you are forced to stay awake. Think of those moments in your childhood when you spent hours alone but never felt completely lonely, as if an unseen friend sat beside you while you played, daydreamed, drew worlds on paper, or stared out the window imagining stories. Think of those times when you just knew something about someone you had barely met, and later in life events proved you right. Think of situations where you avoided danger, or made a sudden last-minute decision that saved you from pain, chaos, or harm, without any logical explanation for why you changed your mind. These threads are not isolated coincidences. Together, they form a pattern of protection, guidance, and spiritual training. For some Scorpios, this spirit feels tied to the bloodline, like a strong ancestor, whose strength echoes through your bones, pushing you to break generational cycles of trauma, shame, or silence. For others, the presence feels far older, almost ancient, like a guide who has walked with you across lifetimes, carrying wisdom too deep to have been picked up in just a few years on Earth. And for many of you, this guardian feels like a dedicated protector that was assigned to your soul before you even arrived, because the path you agreed to walk required more than human willpower. It required constant spiritual reinforcement. But regardless of how it expresses itself in your life, there is one common thread. You are not here to live an ordinary story. You are here to transform, to confront what others run from, to transmute darkness into insight, to turn pain into power. That kind of journey is never easy, never linear, never soft around the edges. It demands that you fall, rise, fall again, and rise higher each time. And because of that, Spirit has been holding you through every storm, even when you felt completely abandoned. Remember the times you cried alone, thinking no one understood you, feeling like a stranger in your own family, your own circle, your own skin. Remember the heartbreak that shattered you so deeply you thought you would never feel whole again. Remember the betrayal that turned your world upside down, the ending that felt like death, the loss that made breathing feel heavy. Somehow, through all of it, a tiny part of you refused to break completely. A small stubborn flame never went out, no matter how strong the winds against you were. That flame is not just your resilience, Scorpio. It's your soul, being constantly oxygenated by the presence that refuses to let you disappear. When you didn't know how to get out of bed, something moved you. When your mind was full of doubt, something whispered a different possibility. When you were 2 steps away from making a decision that would have destroyed you, something redirected your path at the last moment. This unseen companion has never taken away your free will, but it has always nudged, softened, redirected, and shielded you wherever possible so that you could continue toward the mission you chose. This mission is not necessarily about fame, religion, or public titles. Often it's quieter, but far more powerful. Maybe you are meant to be the one who breaks a cycle of emotional neglect in your family by choosing to parent differently. Maybe you are meant to be the friend who tells the truth others are afraid to speak, the one who holds up a mirror that helps someone finally leave an abusive situation. Maybe you are meant to be the healer, who doesn't wear a white coat but offers a listening ear, a safe space, a word that arrives at exactly the right moment for someone on the edge. Maybe your mission is to transform your own wounds into wisdom that lights the way for others walking through similar darkness. Whatever your specific expression is, your life has never been random. The intensity you've suffered has always been refining you into someone who can carry light in very dark places. And light bearers, especially those born under the sign of Scorpio, rarely walk alone. Your spirit companion doesn't just protect you from what could destroy you, it also amplifies your natural talents. That piercing intuition of yours, that ability to read people quickly, the way your dreams sometimes feel like messages rather than nonsense. These are all channels your guardian uses. Think of the dreams that felt too vivid to ignore, the ones that showed you warnings, patterns, or future events that later mirrored reality in uncanny ways. Think of the recurring symbols, numbers, animals, or elements that seem to stalk your life at crucial turning points. Water that calms you in ways nothing else can, a particular bird or creature that appears at emotional crossroads, a number sequence that shows up when you are doubting yourself. These are not just aesthetic details of your life. They are spiritual breadcrumbs, signatures of a presence trying to say, I am here, I am watching, you are guided. As you move further into your life, this presence is no longer content to function entirely in the background. You've reached a stage where your awareness is expanding, where your spiritual senses are becoming sharper, and because of that, your guardian is inviting you into conscious collaboration. That may mean trusting your intuitive hits more instead of dismissing them. It may mean sitting in silence for a few minutes each day, breathing slowly, and simply acknowledging, I know you're here. I welcome your guidance. It might look like journaling the dreams that feel different, the coincidences that feel too precise, the gut feelings that later prove themselves right, and treating them not as random events, but as communication. You don't need elaborate rituals, special tools, or perfect techniques to connect. Your sincerity is enough. Your openness is enough. The unseen world does not require theatrics. It responds to truth. At the same time, it's important to hold this understanding gently and wisely. This story of a spirit walking beside you since childhood is a spiritual metaphor, a symbolic reflection of how protected, guided, and accompanied you truly are. It is not here to replace your judgment, your mental health care, your grounded choices, or your personal responsibility. Think of this narrative as a mirror held up to your inner world, not as a rigid rule book. This narrative is a mirror, a reflection of a potential timeline, a story whispered into the universe for those who are meant to hear it. It is a journey into one powerful possibility, a thought experiment for the soul. If this message awakens a sleeping part of your intuition, if it makes your heart feel strangely seen, and your life suddenly make a little more sense, then keep the pieces that feel true to you. Hold them close. Let them comfort you on the nights when everything feels too heavy. And if it doesn't resonate, let it drift away like a passing cloud in a wide sky, without fear or attachment, knowing that not every story is for every spirit. Your inner knowing, your intuition, remains your deepest authority. What matters most is this: you were never as alone as you thought you were. Every time you felt out of place, there was a presence sitting quietly beside you. Every time you thought, "I shouldn't have survived that," something beyond logic was standing between you and disaster. Every time you wondered why your life seemed harder, messier, more intense than others, it was not punishment. It was preparation. Your soul did not come here to drift through an easy script. It came to feel deeply, love deeply, hurt deeply, and rise over and over into deeper levels of wisdom and compassion. And Spirit agreed to walk the entire way with you. Now as you listen, you may feel a soft pressure over your heart, a wave of emotion you can't quite name, a memory of a childhood night resurfacing unexpectedly. You might feel like crying without knowing why, or you might feel strangely peaceful, as if a puzzle piece has quietly clicked into place. Let yourself feel whatever comes. This is your spirit's way of saying, yes, I've been here. Yes, I am here. Yes, I will continue to be here. You don't need to understand every detail yet. You don't need to define this presence perfectly. Just knowing that you are accompanied is enough for now. Over time, as you stay open, the signs will become clearer, the communication more recognizable, the trust deeper. So, Scorpio, as you move forward from this moment, try this. Before you sleep, take a breath and say in your own simple words, "Thank you for walking with me. Show me what I need to know next." When you wake up, notice how you feel, what you remember, what crosses your path during the day. Pay attention to the subtle rather than waiting for the dramatic. Spirit speaks most often in whispers, not in thunder. And whenever life feels unbearable, whenever grief or confusion washes over you, remember that somewhere just beyond what your eyes can see, a loyal presence is still standing guard, still guiding, still believing in your capacity to rise again. Your story is not ordinary because you are not ordinary, and the companion that chose to walk with you knew that from the very beginning.